Greetings! Are you poor, living paycheck to paycheck like myself? Don't you love seeing an influencer or celebrity take over a Starbucks to work a shift just to promote their album? Or how about when they proclaim their philanthropic deeds by turning it into content? Why do these people think it's a good idea to gasconade their wealth in our faces while cosplaying as the working class as a way to participate in shameless self-promotion? God, why? Celebrities. Who needs them? When you reach a certain level of fame and notoriety, you completely lose touch with what it was like being an average person before fame and notoriety. To an extent, it's understandable. Notoriety has its own set of drawbacks. You're insulated by a team of bodyguards and assistants and managers. Financial literacy completely disappears and privacy becomes a luxury. Ben Affleck can't even pick up the Dunkin' order on his porch without paparazzi capturing him in disgusting sweatpants and bedhead. The only person that sees my disgusting sweatpants and bedhead is the Grubhub driver, who I then put down the moment he leaves my food because he's fulfilled his purpose. This isn't to suggest that the lives of celebrities are necessarily better or worse. They're definitely better, but there is a bit of relativity. I have no idea what kind of stress, anxiety, and mental and emotional pressure people like Britney Spears deal with and then let out in a cathartic dance wielding two 10-inch chef's knives. Not to mention the conniving weirdos who try to take advantage of them and family members who steal their money. Yes, they're not doing the same amount of physical labor as a farmhand, unless you count Nicole Richie inseminating a cow on The Simple Life. But they still deal with their own kinds of hurdles, regardless of how overpaid they are to tell their silly jokes and write their silly songs. Being a creator or celebrity with a large following means much of their existence revolves around some kind of shameless self-promotion. They often take part in some sort of philanthropy that often comes across as self-promotion rather than a truly altruistic act. Other times, their marketing team thinks it's a good idea for them to cosplay as the working class by putting a little vest and name tag on them where they patronize employees of some mega corporation who can't even afford healthcare or rent. In regards to their philanthropy, it's obviously not all bad, and in some cases, it does provide some relief to some people. I'm not saying you shouldn't donate yourself, or that multimillionaires shouldn't either. Giving some of their unearned wealth to charity or starting a charity of their own that provides services and goods to those who desperately need them can be well-intentioned. But ultimately, many of these efforts don't address the underlying problem of why we have to give to certain communities. Some celebrities do this quietly and in private and don't disclose or promote their goodwill. Then there are those who turn that goodwill into content and self-aggrandize their efforts. Many instances of these goodwill promotional tours are simply PR, a way to stay relevant in the mainstream that was cooked up by some dork in a boardroom coming up with a marketing strategy to promote their new self-help book or holiday album. Madonna, Bono, Shakira, and other celebrities with full names have all either created charity foundations or donated money to tackle issues from world hunger to inner city education. But setting up a foundation to build schools in Africa is much harder and bogged down in more red tape and require way more planning than writing a #1 hit song. Kanye set up a foundation to curb school dropout rates way back in 2007, only to shutter its doors a year later despite receiving over $400,000. Madonna set up a charity to build a school for girls, only to learn that some of the $3.8 million had been misappropriated. Usually though, celebrities partner with an established charity rather than start one themselves because what the hell does Chris Evans know about nonprofit business structures? Lady Gaga, for instance, donates tens of thousands of dollars to established LGBTQ organizations, which is great and probably the best way to go about putting your money into helping a marginalized community. No matter how you spin it though, a certain portion of the population will always see a celebrity promoting or even announcing they're doing something philanthropic as icky, preferring that they just do it and not make an Instagram post about how they did it or make an appearance at a UN convention. Leo, you're an overacting high school dropout. Why would I ever listen to what you have to say about climate change? Too bad Kanye's foundation wasn't around when Leo was in school. Just saying. In the grand scheme of things, this behavior isn't all bad. Cringy? Sure. And there is genuine merit in someone with a massive platform and influence bringing awareness to issues that affect millions of people around the globe. But it's not like someone would ever take that philanthropy and turn it into content that rakes in millions of dollars in AdSense revenue, right? Wrong, you sweet misinformed angel, of course they would! Jimmy Donaldson is in the news again for some less than ethical content. His latest video on the Beast Philanthropy channel, titled "I built 100 wells in Africa" is not being received well. No. The whole thing is weird because despite the positivity in the comments on the video itself, Jimmy seemed to be anticipating some kind of backlash and made things a lot worse by tweeting the following. "I already know I'm gonna get canceled because I uploaded a video helping people, and to be 100% clear, I don't care. I'm always going to use my channel to help people and try to inspire my audience to do the same." How embarrassing. According to an article from Insider, they were unable to find any posts from people calling for him to be canceled over the video, so I don't really know where this is coming from. It almost feels like he tweeted this in order to draw more attention by insinuating some drama just to get people to watch, which is gross and weird. That, or he had a feeling that exploiting the plight of less fortunate individuals might leave a bad taste in people's mouth and wanted to get ahead of it. Also gross and weird. I watched the video in question, and at certain points it does have a white savior vibe to it, and this isn't the first time he's exploited low-income people for content after all. Earlier this year, he posted what is now a pretty infamous video about curing 1,000 people of cataracts. The video ultimately flaunts his wealth, where he also gives away $10,000 to multiple patients and a Tesla to another. Danny Gonzalez did a great video several years ago detailing how this can actually ruin a person's finances and their life when you factor in taxes and insurance. In many cases, it's more inconvenient than getting a used combustion engine vehicle depending on where you live. And if you think someone who can't afford a simple cataract surgery somehow can afford the insurance payment and upkeep costs of a Tesla, you don't understand math. The overall optics of these philanthropy videos are so over the top and completely sensationalized. The video has one of the most ludicrous thumbnails I've ever seen. Everything about it looks AI generated, as do most of his thumbnails. Obviously, it's a way to grab attention with the over-the-top and heavily photoshopped thumbnails that encourage clicks, but they all look like parody. His response to the criticisms over that video were, "Twitter, rich people should help others with their money." Me, "Okay, I'll use my money to help people and I promise to give away all my money before I die. Every single penny." Twitter, "MrBeast, bad." This is obviously a gross misrepresentation of why people were upset. He can do whatever he wants with his money. They were upset that he used 1,000 people with disabilities as props and then received AdSense revenue from said disabilities. It kind of cancels out paying for the surgeries when your net worth is close to $500 million and you're making probably $1 million on the video where you paid for a surgery that cost roughly $2,000. In the past, he's given $10,000 away to a random homeless person where he said he didn't care what he spent it on as long as it wasn't drugs. I'm sorry, but you gave a random guy $10,000. It's his now. He can do whatever he wants with it. Adding a caveat and dictating where the money goes isn't up to old Jimmy. It also highlights how if you want to make sure a donation is being used in ways you feel comfortable with, i.e. ethically, you should probably donate to an org that has some kind of infrastructure in place. More importantly, it suggests that there are right and wrong ways to spend your money without addressing greater issues like substance abuse and addiction and, income inequality. In general, though, this type of charity feels a lot like street photographers calling a photograph of a person sleeping under a bus stop art. While technically it is legal to give a wad of cash to a random homeless person and photograph whoever you want in a public place, it's not exactly always ethical, especially if you intend to then sell that photo of a person sleeping on a bench where you make money from their likeness or a video that's monetized. People often cite the work of Lewis Hine, who photographed the living and working conditions of children in the early 20th century when talking about the ethics and legality of photographing the struggles and oppression of the average person. But it's a false equivalence, as photographic technology was nowhere near as accessible or common in 1907 as it is today. Today, everyone has a camera in their pocket and you can buy a decent 35mm on eBay for like $40. This is the camera Lewis Hine was probably using in 1907. Not exactly a discreet palm-sized Leica. I'm sure the average Edwardian-era suffragette would have thought his contraption was stealing people's souls when he pulled out a 5x7 glass plate that had the image of a child etched into it. Even the idea of this kind of photography was brand new. His photographs weren't considered art at the time, as he was using them to push for social change. They weren't getting framed and put up in a gallery for rich, affluent people to gawk at. Big distinction there. The other issue people who are not children have with Jimmy's videos is the manipulative, lowest common denominator nature of the content he creates. It's loud and bright, the editing is as chaotic as a Jason Bourne movie, and it's all clickbait that takes advantage of, or hacks, the YouTube algorithm. I'm not saying using every trick in the book is a bad thing to make it as a creator. I mean, look at me. But the ethics of doing so and not having some kind of standards is questionable at best. So many of his videos suggest that making millions or billions of dollars is the greatest thing you can do with your time and a realistic, achievable goal, when it's just not. The worst part is that the majority of his audience are children. I don't even have to research that. It's obvious who he's targeting by the way he markets his channels. It gives the wrong impression of what life is going to be like for these Gen Z and Alpha kids when they turn 18 and enter the workforce. Sorry kids, you ain't gonna be a millionaire by 23 and you probably won't ever be able to buy a house. I mean, neither will I. Either. We're all fucked. At the end of the day, the only through line with MrBeast content is money. Either spending a lot of it or giving it away. Every decision he makes about the content he's going to produce is based on its virality. Like, the only reason he knows that philanthropy and charity are technically good is because he read it somewhere once but doesn't fully comprehend that philanthropy and charity can have depraved intentions based on their execution. A deeper, more nefarious issue with this type of philanthrotainment is that it ultimately doesn't address the core issues that create the inequity he claims to be combating or solving. These videos are a band-aid on a bullet hole. For instance, the cataract video doesn't address why these people couldn't afford a $2,000 10-minute operation. And while watching this kind of content might seem heartwarming on the surface, thinking about the implications and greater systemic failures of the healthcare industry for more than like 2 seconds reveals how depressing and very not heartwarming it actually is. Like seeing those puff pieces on local news titled, "7-year-old sells lemonade to pay for brain cancer treatment." What fucking world do we live in where this is considered heartwarming and inspiring? It's so frustrating and grotesque that it sounds like an Onion article satirizing the current state of healthcare and lack of access to life-saving treatments, or the ham-fisted plot to Elysium. Jimmy Donaldson would do more good by just making an informational documentary about these issues with actual solutions and how to effectively make change, rather than some frenetic Willy Wonka acid trip video aimed at children. Children, mind you, that don't have the means, influence, ability, or know-how to write, say their representative, or donate their lunch money to charity. This will be the second time I reference Immanuel Kant, but I do believe that the moral value of an action is determined by whether it is done out of duty and in accordance with a universal moral law, rather than out of self-interest or for the sake of the consequences. Kant referred to this concept as a categorical imperative, which is a principle that one must follow regardless of one's desires or the potential outcomes. Basically, you should do the right thing because it's right, not because of any benefits to yourself. One must understand that our actions are truly moral when they are performed out of duty, and that the motives behind our actions are crucial to their moral worth. Where is the morality and altruism in exposing 1,000 people with disabilities to potentially tens or hundreds of millions of strangers on the internet by giving away money that may only be a temporary fix, or a car that will most likely make their life harder? This stuff only benefits the MrBeast hype machine. And I guess the 1,000 people who got cataract surgery too. But at what cost? I want to take a little detour here because what I'm really talking about is self-promotion merely as a means to an end of self-enrichment. Like I've mentioned already, giving back and patting yourself on the back for donating to charity is only part of the tone-deaf celebrity and influencer performance marketing. When they're not acting philanthropic, quote unquote, they're usually dressing up in working class cosplay to sell you their brand. The D'Amelio sisters recently decided it would be a good idea to make some cutesy TikToks working at Walmart to promote their Be Happy snacks, which also did not sit well with viewers, with one person saying, "I wish I had enough money to cosplay as a retail worker, so fun being in the working class." And another saying, "Seeing this after working 12-hour shifts 4 days a week to barely afford to live." So much fun. The D'Amelio's actions were primarily aimed at promoting their brand and generating content for personal gain. Even if they didn't mean any harm and they're just ignorant dummies, their actions still lack the aforementioned moral worth. But also, completely misunderstand the state of the working class and ignore the fact that 78% of American workers are currently living paycheck to paycheck. I'm one of those people. I still have a full-time day job. I do this for fun, with the goal of, not having to do that day job anymore. I say ignore because finding that statistic took me about 17 seconds and no one on the D'Amelio team thought to look it up. Doing this kind of stunt also lacks authenticity and just feels like a form of mockery of the working class. I'm pretty sure a large portion of the people they're trying to sell their stale popcorn to are also children or can barely afford to pay rent, let alone buy an overpriced bag of bland, unmemorable popcorn.
Alright, so Charlie, Dixie, and Trixie dropped some popcorn and we bought every single flavor and we're gonna try them all and see if they're actually good or not because they're an influencer product and everyone eats these up. It's not bad, it's just not good or like memorable.
This is not a new trend among celebrity influencers and creators. Trisha Paytas has done role-playing videos where she worked at McDonald's, Burger King, and Starbucks for clout. And speaking of Starbucks, both Ed Sheeran and Lady Gaga worked a shift for the corporations best known for their union-busting tactics, so that's cool. Speaking of union-busting, Terry Crews worked a shift for an Amazon commercial, which is just straight-up propaganda considering the timing of its release and the workers that were striking and attempting to unionize. Kid Rock's whole persona revolves around coming straight out the trailer while being raised by millionaire parents who grew up here. Bet you weren't expecting a Kid Rock reference, were you? Ba-wa-ta-ba. It never goes well anytime a celebrity puts on an apron for a mega corporation and runs around like a little scamp, eating cold soup and acting like they've retained even a modicum of what it was like when they worked in a grocery store in 1942. Dave, go home to your mansion. Stop bothering people at Hy-Vees. These acts of philanthropy and cosplaying as a member of the working class to shill their brand that's just a clone of another brand that does it better, fail so often because it trivializes the issue or misses the mark in its execution. While performative philanthropy and cosplaying as poor are uniquely different, they serve the same purpose. The general public is more tuned in to social issues and have developed an acute sixth sense for spotting fakery and self-promotional horse shit. Internet audiences are bombarded with content of all kinds, all day, and after almost 2 decades of living a large portion of our lives online, we've unintentionally honed our skills of being able to see through content that was clearly brainstormed in a sterile office with a team of strategists and analysts and marketing and PR managers. This sort of thing probably would have worked 10 years ago when people didn't have their finger on the pulse of every social issue, systemic failure, and marketing strategy. A pandemic where, a lot of people lost their jobs and just stared at TikTok doesn't help either. But now with a wealth gap that rivals that of the old regime of France right before the French Revolution, the commoners have access to a wealth of knowledge by way of studies and insights into just how bad things are for the working class. And we're very pissed off. We refuse to be force-fed garbage content that parades essential workers and people with disabilities around like show ponies for the entertainment of the ultra-wealthy. And children who haven't developed critical thinking skills yet. We watch performers and entertainers because they are entertaining and will continue to do so because they're objectively talented. Most of the time. But please stay in your lane and just do what you're good at. We don't want to see Ben Affleck work the drive-thru at a Dunkin' or Jimmy MrBeast Donaldson flaunt his wealth by making a YouTube video that's sole purpose is detailing just how good a person he is, and we definitely don't want to see them put on a hairnet and work a deep fryer as a way to break bread with the common man or to relive their youth of working in the deli section of an Albertsons as a teenager. That's the video. Thanks so much for watching, if you made it this far. If you didn't, you're not gonna see this anyway. So this outro is for only the people that stuck around. Hi, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for sticking around. Please be sure you like and share and comment, all the usual things that I'm obligated to ask you. Something I always forget to let people know is go follow me on Instagram. I post updates about the channel and, it's just silly stuff that I'm getting up to. I'm a little scamp, just like David Letterman, eating cold soup all the time. You don't have to do any of that stuff. It's fine if you don't. Anyway, until next time, bye, vanish, see ya, adios. I love you.